My name is Nancy Shankman. I'm on the faculty of the music education program at the Steinhardt School of Education. I teach choral conducting. I teach creative performance opportunities in music education. I teach choral materials and methods. And I am responsible for school, community, and cultural outreach. That's involved with securing internships for our students, with teaching artists from the cultural organizations of New York City. And we've just created a masterclass series in collaboration with the Metropolitan Opera Guild and the New York Philharmonic to begin a series of professional development opportunities for music educators throughout the metropolitan area. I was with the New York City Department of Education for 42 years. I started as a music teacher in the South Bronx, where I stayed for 29 years. I love teaching there. I love taking kids who have nothing and bringing them along and changing their lives. I had many opportunities to teach to teach more privileged kids, and I just turned it down because that wasn't what I loved. So I stayed there, and then I went on to become an assistant principal. I spent my whole career in the Bronx, actually. I became an assistant principal in a high school, chairman of a music department. And then I became director of the arts for the Bronx high schools. And finally, before I left the Department of Education in August of 2004, I spent the last 3 years as director of music for the New York City Department of Education, where I was responsible for overseeing the publication of a new blueprint for teaching and learning in music, and responsible for helping the music teachers throughout the city. We had some rough years in the 70s when the budgets were cut. The first thing that was always cut were the arts, and many music teachers left the system. For example, I went out on maternity leave in 1972, and I was in a school in the South Bronx, middle school, that had a dance program, an orchestra, junior and senior orchestra, junior and senior band, a theater program, and junior and senior chorus, and a steel band. When I came back in 1977 from maternity leave, I was the only one left. And the only reason that I was left is that I had spent 10 years there before and I had seniority. So it took many years to build up what was lost. And unfortunately, what happened was that so many of the people who became principals and administrators in the school system were going to the public schools during that time where there was no music and there were no arts. And so their frame of reference was not, had nothing to do with the arts. So when they were asked, why don't you have a music program in your school, they just didn't understand it. And unfortunately, the arts, unlike math and social studies and English, are not mandated to the extent that those other subjects are by the state. And so even though students need it and parents want it, it's really still up to the individual principal to have the passion to make it happen. The students, what I like about the music education program at NYU is that it has the best of both worlds. Students here are required to take the same musical track as the performance majors, and therefore they study theory, they study music history, they study sight singing, they take private lessons, and they perform in ensembles. And that is crucial to both performers and people who are going to be educators. Then they also learn a tremendous amount about the theory of educators throughout the century, throughout the many centuries. And they deal a lot with Howard Gardner and the theory of multiple intelligences, which is something that I feel very strongly about, that children don't all learn in the same way. And you have to find ways to address different learners, children who have different learning styles. So the children get both, the best of both. I teach the hands-on practical courses. So for example, I created a course called Creative Performance Opportunities in Music Education. And the premise of the course is that when when a teacher goes into a school for the first time, the principal may say, Okay, it's September. By December, I need a performance. And these are the students you have, and you have to just create it. So in my class, the students in my class become the teachers, become the actors, directors, musicians, producers, set designers, and they create a piece, whether it's a musical review or it's a group of ensemble pieces or whatever. They create it, and I am always very mindful of the fact that they need to sprinkle their text with diverse music. And when I teach student teachers in a seminar, I always talk about the diversity of the population of students in New York City. Because NYU, very honestly, is not that diverse a population. So it's important that these students understand. Now, when they go out and student teach, they see it every day in the schools that they're student teaching in. So, but I think that makes teaching so much more exciting. It's not enough for a student to just go to school and learn how to add and read and do science experiments. There's a whole other part of the human psyche and the soul that needs to be nurtured. And you cannot be a well-rounded human being, an adult, unless you've had the opportunity to participate in the arts. Also, when you are out of school and you become a citizen, especially in this great city where we have so many opportunities for concerts and theater and museums, it's a sin, a crime, not to have to educate our youngsters to be able to take advantage of that world. I always tell my students that if you're doing this because you want to play or sing and this is something to fall back on, don't do it. Because this, like anything else, you need to be passionate about it. And if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to like it, you're not going to be a good teacher, and your students won't learn well. So I always say, don't use this as an excuse for something else that you want to do. Do it because you want to do it. And last year, in fact, we had approximately 15 music teachers, students graduate and go into the world of teaching, and every one of them got a position. So there is a great need for music teachers in New York City. And as much as I'm not supposed to have priorities, we try to get them, to encourage them to stay here in New York City. It behooves a teacher, a music teacher, to really become familiar with world music. In fact, in the document we just published, that was one of our major objectives and one of the most difficult challenges, because much world music is not written. Some music from South Africa and music from other places in the world, the tradition is more oral than written. And so it's really a challenge to find repertoire that teachers can use with their students. But I think it's an absolute necessity for every music teacher to teach world music. I mean, in New York City, in one school alone, there could be 55 different ethnicities. And why should we just teach Western music? And that's not to say that we shouldn't teach Western music. It's just that it's a much, we need to teach music that addresses the diverse cultures that are in our schools, as well as the music that they don't know. And we're not there to teach them only what they know, but if all the students bring what they know to the classroom, what a rich classroom that would be. And then in addition to that, they would learn Western music and anything else the teacher feels is appropriate. Parents are very powerful. I think that music teachers need to rally the support of the parents of their children and need to get them involved in the program, have a parents' club for the band or the chorus. It seems like, very obvious to do that, but it doesn't happen very often. And I think the most important thing is that if parents find out that their child is in a school that doesn't have music and the school down the block has a great music program, then the parents should complain, because every child deserves music. It's also the role of the music teacher to be proactive. I stood on a soapbox my whole life, and you know, it's interesting because people say, oh, look how they're getting rid of music teachers. To be very honest with you, in all the years that I was at the Department of Education, I never knew of a good music teacher that was let go. A good music teacher who really added to the culture of the school and changed the culture of the school and worked together with the non-music teachers, the social studies teachers, the English teachers to create a culture of the arts in the school. It changed the school, and that person would have been devastated without that person. So I really believe that people have to be proactive and have to fight for what they believe every child should have, especially music teachers. You know, the easiest thing to start is to have every kid start singing. Every child in an elementary school should sing. And every child should have the opportunity to sing a diverse repertoire of songs from the time they're little. They should move, they should create, they should improvise, they should learn to do all those things. And then around the 3rd or 4th grade, students should learn to start to play a recorder so that they can read music. And that's very inexpensive. And then by the time they get to the 4th grade, they should be able to be either in a chorus or an instrumental ensemble. In New York City, we happen to be lucky. Well, actually, it's not only in New York City, all over the country. VH1, Save the Music Foundation, is willing to put instruments in any school, instruments, piano laboratories, guitars, in any school that promises to hire a music teacher. So they won't leave it there if the music teacher is let go or the music teacher leaves, unless the teacher is replaced. But this is a national program. They have it all over the country. And we have a number of schools in New York City that have taken advantage of that opportunity. And then the other thing is, you know, as I mentioned, I wrote this curriculum in collaboration with the cultural community of New York City, with the Philharmonic, with the Metropolitan Opera Guild, with Jazz at Lincoln Center. And these people feel very strongly, the way a music teacher does, that whatever they do in the schools, whether they bring a teaching artist in to demonstrate a violin or a flute, or whether they prepare the kids for a concert that they take them to, their work is never as effective if there's no music teacher in the school. So they will be the first ones to tell you that they need to have music teachers in the school so that they can not take over their job, but enrich and enhance the knowledge that they have and the opportunities for the children. You have to be passionate about what you do. You have to love children. You have to love music. You have to love bringing music to children. You have to be organized. You have to be well prepared. And you have to be able to take the good days with the bad days. Not every day is great, but sometimes when you have a really great day, it makes up for all the other days that weren't so great. And you know, it's interesting, sometimes music teachers always have a chance to perform, and they always have a chance to get the applause. And other teachers of other disciplines are sometimes resentful of that, because all they have to worry about is whether their math scores, the kids are going to test well on the math test, and they don't get the kind of kudos that a music teacher does. So the music teacher really, it's implicit in their operations in a school to be as inclusive as they can of other teachers in working with their programs, so that everyone gets the applause. Preparation is a very important thing. Anybody who goes in there and wings it is not going to be very successful, because students pick it up right away. So a teacher has to be well prepared, and a teacher has to know the music that they're teaching, that he or she is teaching, very important. A teacher has to be sensitive to the needs and learning styles of the students in her class, and not everybody learns the same way. The actual classroom management piece is probably the most difficult thing for students to learn, because while you can teach certain techniques, other things are just experience. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And we tried to send them to schools where the teachers they work with are masters of what they do, so that they have good models, good role models. And then I also look for, do they love it? You know, do they love it? Do the kids love them? Because if they're going to do this for the rest of their lives, they better love it. And so I would hope that they come out of that student teaching experience, as most of them do, and say, oh, I love it there. I love it there. And that, if I hear that, then I know that they're going to be successful. To be very honest, I think you can teach it up to a point, but it's something you can learn. Classroom management. You can learn how to choose a repertoire. You can learn how to write a lesson plan. But to teach somebody to be passionate about something, you either got it or you don't. I mean, that, and if a person doesn't, and they really are having a hard time, and they really don't seem to be enjoying what they're doing, I encourage them to look at another area. Look somewhere else, because they're not going to be happy or successful. And so why start out with something that you're not going to want to do for the rest of your life? I really think it's a calling, because your day doesn't end at 3 o'clock. And I'm not saying that other teachers' days end at 3 o'clock. They have to take papers home, they have to grade them and so forth. But you have rehearsals after school. You work with individual students. You know, and the older they get, you prepare them for auditions. I mean, it's just not a 9 to 3 job. And then if you're a musician and you do your own music outside of school, it's a full-time profession. For the music teacher, students need individualized and ensemble rehearsals after school, and need to go to performances, and need to be exposed to the world of the arts outside of school. In addition, music teachers need to themselves do music outside of school, so that they, it's like a doctor who continually takes courses to be up to date on the latest techniques. A person who doesn't practice his or her own music loses something, and loses something in their teaching. So the more you are a musician, the better teacher you are. What we did was we decided that we would, if we just came up with another document, that teachers would say, oh, another one, and they'd stick it up on a shelf somewhere. Because we know how busy music teachers are. So we decided to frame this document around the repertoire. And in other words, everybody deals with repertoire. So we based it upon the national standards and the state standards, and we use 5 strands: music making or arts making, literacy in music, making connections, which is a crucial one, community and cultural resources, and careers in music. And the idea of this document is, whenever you're teaching a piece of music, to just thread it through those 5 strands. At some point throughout the 3 months that you're working on a piece of music, you're going to make connections. You're going to teach literacy. You're going to teach them how to read music. You're going to talk about dynamics. You're going to, I always give the example, if you're doing the Hallelujah Chorus with your students, there must be, in December, 100 performances of the Hallelujah Chorus in New York City. If you don't take your students to hear a concert of you really lax, because you're not framing that piece of music in the context in which it was written. And if you don't talk about the composer, and you're teaching the 1812 overture, and you don't talk about what was going on in 1812 and why the composer wrote this, the performance is going to suffer. The idea of doing this, of framing, it's like taking, one of the students I taught said, it's like taking a naked song or piece of music and dressing it and wrapping it up, so that by the time, for example, I did some workshops. My husband did them also in Monterrey. NYU sent us to Monterrey, Mexico, to teach music teachers. And I taught Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. And they sang it. Some of them were very good musicians with no soul. And I said, what's going on? And then I realized that no one there knows what a spiritual is. They never sang a spiritual. They don't have a frame of reference for that. So I took some real quality time to talk about it and to talk about why they look forward, the slaves looked forward to the afterlife, and because it had to be better than what they were doing. Well, the end result being that when they sang it again, it was a different piece of music. And that's the object of this document. And what we did was we created benchmarks at the end of grades 2, 5, 8, and 12, and in each one of these strands. And so, for example, in making music, by the end of grade 12, a student who studies choral music, and vocal, these are the things she should be able to do, or he. Breathing techniques, and tone quality, and pitch recognition and literacy, and all these things. So we have benchmarks throughout for each strand of what students should be able to know and do by the end of the 12th grade, because this is a K-12 document. Students in New York City, you would really be remiss if you did not take them to take advantage of all the rich cultural opportunities that we have in New York City. Concerts and theater and opera. Even if it's a small town, there's a church that does wonderful music every holiday. Even, a big thing now is distance learning. There's a lot of opportunity for students to engage in not only observing, but hands-on work with students from elsewhere across the country. And then some of the organizations in New York City and the big cities that they are near reach out to the smaller areas and invite them to participate in their master classes, in their performances. So there's always something happening. And the more a music teacher can involve her students or his students in the world of music outside the classroom, the richer the education will be.